Phillip Fulmer joins us now.
Good morning, guys. Good morning. How are you?
Pretty good. How you doing,
Fantastic.
Coach?
How are you, sir?
I'm good. Thank you.
Hey, we appreciate the time. I can't think of anybody more appropriate to get on after Tennessee beat Alabama because you were pretty good against those guys.
Yeah, those were always great games. You're at Tennessee. You're measured by that game a lot, and then also obviously the same for Alabama. And historically, this game, that win means so much to the people of Tennessee and coaches and players and just everybody that's been a part of it. Having seen it from a lot of different looks, as a prospect way back when, and recruit at both schools, and then obviously to play against them, and then assistant coach and head coach, and all that. It's just a wonderful game, and it means so much to the conference all the time and nationally. And what a great win it was for Coach Heupel and the Tennessee football team. Really won with a lot of great defense, and that's a good start to compete for championships. And not just in the defensive front, they've done great, but the linebackers and the secondary, they've just played super, and he's got a very physical football team, and it's continuing to get better. And it's been fun to watch.
I don't know if you saw this, but Nick Saban said that it was easier to get his team up for Tennessee than even against Auburn. He said that his players in that time viewed Tennessee as a bigger rival than Auburn. Does that surprise you at all?
No, not at all, David. And I've heard him say that before. Actually.
Okay.
So, I think it's true. Obviously, the in-state rivalries are always big, and that's as big as any. But this goes back to Neyland and Bryant, and all the implications that the game meant. Nationally, conference-wise, it's just it's just phenomenal football rivalry to be a part of.
Coach, you talked a little bit about the physicality of Tennessee's team. And, we all came into this year expecting them to be your typical offensive, throw it all over the field that Josh Heupel's done, and they've really had to adjust. I'm sure there's times where you as a head coach had a team that you thought the personnel was one thing, and then the season kicked off and it's not what you thought, and you have to adjust. How difficult is it to do that on the fly in the season?
Well, I would argue that he's doing what he has to do to be as good as he can be with the personnel that he has. He's got a young, very, very talented quarterback. And you go back to his first year and his second, he ran the football very well, and there happened to be a lot of more quarterback runs and things with Hooker and so he's always been he coaches physical. I watch practice. I go out occasionally and watch how they go about things. I mean, he wants to be a physical team and run the ball, and if you crowd him too much in there, he can really make you pay. And I think that's more of what you've seen is him being a coach that whatever he has to do to win the game. Second half of the Arkansas game probably emphasizes that as just as much. On Saturday, I mean, Sampson is a tough back, a really, really good back, and the offensive line is maturing and playing better, this week than they might have a couple weeks ago, and that gave them a chance to make short yardage, be good in the red zone, not to have to kick so many field goals and those kind of things, because if you can run the football in tight and close and short yardage and goal line, those kind of things, it makes a huge difference. Vice versa, if your defense is not allowing the people to run the football or make first downs and short yardage, or making people kick at field goals, which has happened against Florida and Alabama. We made them kick some field goals. That ended up being the difference in the ball game. So I compliment him on what he's trying to do with what he has right now and how people are trying to play him.
Phillip, I made the argument earlier in the show and just kind of popped in my head, and I have a tendency to just throw stuff out there. So maybe this is crazy, and you can call
You
me
always
out.
have a habit of that. Yeah,
Maybe.
we won't go back there.
That's right. Dylan Sampson reminds me of Travis Stevens in some ways. Just never seems to miss a hole. He's quickness. He seems to always maximize the blocking that is there. Do you see any comparison there?
Yeah, I mean, I could say Travis Stevens. I could also say Travis Henry because he's such a tough runner, you know, and he probably, I don't know if he top end is as fast as them all, probably not. But that physicality that he runs with, but also to have the ability to run away from a linebacker or run away from, you know, the pursuit of the defense and get those extra yards. I mean, I just think he's a great back, and he's getting lots of recognition, but probably not enough, you know, because he is one heck of a football player.
Yeah, Coach, talking about the run game with Sampson and the offensive line and the interior blocking, does as a former lineman yourself, who I know coached a lot of players with playing their hands in the dirt, and a lot of kids now play with their hands up, does it warm your heart to see Tennessee now getting under center on those 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1 plays when for the longest time they got under shotgun?
Well, yes. And it's hard to start the ball 4 yards, 5 yards away, standing still, you know, and I think people realize that more and more. You can see it in pro football, you know, they got the tush push and all, you know, all the other things that are going on just to make first downs, because when you're receiving a snap that deep and starting from a standstill, it's not as conducive as being under and being able to quarterback sneak or start deeper, but taking the ball going forward. But other people make it work, so I'm not a big fan of it.
No.
Not that I have anything to do with it, but yeah.
Agreed. Phillip, you had pretty good success in '98 with a team that was led by its defense. Yet, for those that don't know, you're an offensive coach, offensive lineman, offensive coordinator coming up through the ranks. Was it at all a strange adaptation to win that way? I mean, I know that's what you had to do, but was there a part of you always thinking, man, I'd like to score some more points?
No. I mean, again, I compliment Coach Heupel because we kind of went the same way. What did we have to do to win the game? You know, and I realized way early in my career, you know, because I was a defensive player when I came to Tennessee. I'm still mad about that. No, I'm kidding. But that's where I ended up having to play. But I loved playing defense. I love having for an offensive player to have a defensive mentality. We had so many of those guys in my era that we moved from defensive line that they would have probably been okay or pretty good players, but they could be great players with a defensive mentality on the offensive front. I mean, you look at Cozy Coleman, Fred Weary, Charles McCray. I mean, it goes on and on. They were the heart and soul of our football team, physically, you know, and it made practice tougher. It made just what we were talking about, short yardage goal line. Now, I wanted to use. This Pat Dye called me one time, and he had retired, and he had recruited me in high school, and we were both offensive linemen in college, and, you know, so we had this bond, you know, awkward bond maybe, but a bond. He calls me and he says, "Well, you're kicked out of the club." I said, "What are you talking about?" "Out of the offensive line club. You know, you're throwing the football way too much." And I said, "Hey, Pat, I got Peyton Manning. I'm going to throw the football," you know. So that was our best answer to be as good as we could be, and whatever it took is what we felt like we needed to do. Same with Casey Clausen. Early on, he's you know, we're protecting him, not throwing the ball that much, but it helped our football team as he matured as a freshman for us to throw the thing around, and we got better and better and better, as a team, because we did what we had to do. And I think Coach Heupel does very similar to that. What do you have to do to win the game? And that's the bottom line. Whether you piss everybody off or not, you win the game.
You made you mentioned the Weary, Cozy Coleman. You made a couple of personnel moves after people showed up on campus. Jason Witten was another one that you moved from defensive end to tight end. And I still remember interviewing him after you moved him in that practice. And he was stunned and dismayed. Nowadays, with the transfer portal, a player could say, I'm not going to play that position. I'm bolting. Can you even imagine coaching like that? Because you made the right decision for a lot of guys.
Yeah. That rule could make things challenging. Used to, you might have to wait till school started to make that kind of move. So somebody might leave, or they certainly might leave at the end of the year, but they wouldn't leave in the middle of the year. But now you almost have to wait till they get through their fourth game, I guess, so they can. I think the rules probably still the same, because they can say, well, no, I want to be redshirt, and it's so tough. And usually you move guys to help the team, but also you want to make sure you're moving them. It's going to help them as well. And obviously Jason and I still laugh about it. He was mad at me for 2 months. I mean, he didn't speak to me, and that's okay, because it worked out great for him and great for us. And now he's very appreciative of that opportunity. And, Scott Wells, I just recruit Scott Wells as a defensive lineman, knowing, he's a great wrestler and he's probably not quite fast enough to be a defensive line in our scheme, but how great was it for him? I mean, he ended up playing
12 years.
12 years as an offensive center and a captain of the team, and he would have been probably been a good defensive lineman, but not a great, probably.
Yeah, I've got one other one, Caleb. Let me jump in real quick. You came out one time after practice and said Rashad Baker was perhaps I'm trying to remember the phraseology exactly. You said the most prepared freshman you had ever seen at receiver. And then the next day you moved him to defensive back. Did you know that you were going to do that at the time?
Yeah, well, we had been discussing that, as we do all of them. We had, I think it was 3 days of freshman practice, that nobody was there but the freshmen, at that particular time. And so you really got the chance to spend some time with them and see what you thought. And I was good at a lot of things, I think, but particularly good at finding the right spot for kids to go play. And Rashad, just those same instincts that made him a receiver, and we had some good receivers, made him a great defensive back for us. And he took to it pretty quick.
Yeah, he had a long career in the NFL too.
Yeah, so Coach, Dave and I had a little bit of a debate before you came on the show, and I know you've had a few players like this. So I wanted to know what your thoughts are. Tennessee has an elite edge rusher, defensive end right now in James Pierce. They have an elite lockdown corner in Jermon McCoy. What is more valuable to a defense, a cornerback that can take up the entire side, that can lock down one side of the field, or an edge rusher that dictates the entire way a team blocks?
One goes with the other, honestly, and I'm not trying to get around the question, but one of the reasons the lockdown cornerback is going to be good is somebody that's rushing the quarterback, well. So that goes together. But those things and that linebacker group, it ends up being an elite defense. And if we are anything particular, we are elite on defense, because we can play a lot of people, and everybody's been productive, and coach can count on his defense to be able to help him, make his decisions offensively, scheme wise or ball control wise or whatever,
Well,
yeah,
go ahead, Caleb.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a follow-up on that, because you had Rodney Garner on your staff for a few years in the 90s, I remember, and he's the one who's obviously got who put together a lot of this defensive line. How valuable of assistant is he, and what do you remember about him when he coached under
Yeah,
you?
Rodney was a young coach. Who were really, really doing good. Mostly we talked about. He actually coached offense for me for a bit too there. So great recruiter, great staff guy. Makes the kids understand what their roles are, and he's honest with them and tough with them, and he can hug their neck or he can kick them in the butt, really, really well. And I think the parents appreciate that. He'll get their potential out of them, and he's a heck of an example for all the coaches, really.
Phillip, one last thing, I'll let you out of here. I think Josh Heupel has something similar to what you had in a defensive coordinator. You had it with John Chavis. I think he has it with Tim Banks, that he can trust and either focus on the offense, focus on recruiting, whatever the case may be. I'm not saying you didn't have input on defense. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure Josh Heupel has input on defense, but how nice is it to have kind of that yin to the yang of having a defensive coordinator that you trust to get an elite defense on the field?
Well, yeah, you make a great point, and back in the day, we were very criticized because John was an assistant, was a defensive line coach, didn't have the reputation, but we were both younger, and we ran together and exercised together and had hundreds of hours, thousands of hours probably of just talking football, and when he was a defensive line coach, and he always had input and thoughts on secondary play or linebacker play. He was not just a position coach. He saw the big picture, and he could manage kids and well, and we were really, really glad. I had a great staff. The core of the staff was really, really, really good, and we all stayed together a long time, and that makes a difference.
Phillip, we really appreciate it. Have a blessed day, sir. And I love catching up with you. I still am leading the charge or carrying the banner that there needs to be a Phillip Fulmer statue. You won a championship. I've not given up on that, so we'll get that done eventually.
You're the man. Thank you.
Thank you, Phillip. I appreciate that.